One of the ways in which I use this format, the video conversation on YouTube, is not as a direct conversation, but it's a way of using it which takes advantage of the asynchronous nature of our communication and the kind of indirectness of it, the fact that you and I are separated by tens, hundreds, thousands of miles of space and at the very least minutes of time, but probably hours, days, months, maybe even years of time. And that separation between me and you, between this video and your hearing of it, and any video you might make which is influenced potentially by it and by hearing of that video, those interchanges are separated by this kind of vast medium of space and time. And I think that's something that interests me a lot. And one of the things I think interesting about that, and it's in relation to a mode of communication, which is again not exactly indirect. I'm not interested in being oblique and obscure, but it's a mode of communication which is slightly more porous or slightly more volatile. And I suppose I'm thinking here of something like David Bohm. David Bohm is a physicist. I heard him speak once, actually, one of the worst speakers I've ever heard in my life. But he was, in addition to his physics stuff, he also did some stuff about communication and dialogue. And he's kind of responsible for developing what are sometimes referred to as Bohmian dialogues, which is a communication style, if communication is even the right word, but a style of collective, a style of speaking together, which emphasises the kind of more porous, the softer aspects of collective communication. And he developed these Bohmian dialogues by having dialogues himself, particularly with people like Krishnamurti, because although he was a serious, respected physicist, he was kind of also interested in the spiritual, in the broadest sense, not the religious, but modes of thought and being in the world which weren't easily captured within empiricism. And as I say, he developed this technique of the Bohmian dialogue, and it's something that I've used. I haven't used it recently, but I used to use it in some of my teaching actually years ago, or experimented with it at least. And it is used in various settings, but the way it works is really simple. You get together with a group of people, maybe you're sitting in a circle, and the key thing, it operates mostly in silence. So you're just sitting together, and then someone will say something, and then there's a pause, and then someone else will say something. So it's not call and response. It's not I say something and then you listen carefully to what I've said, pick up the thread, exactly the threads where I've left off, and either continue in them in the way of a relay race or bounce them back to me in the way of a tennis match. It's not as direct as that. It's just you let those words that someone else has said hang in the air, let yourself hear them and understand them for a while, let the normal neuronal activity of your brain, I guess, kind of soften them and make all the connections, and then let it return to silence again, and then you speak with your words informed not by the direct words that they've said, but by that much more subtle and dissipated and defrayed environment that's been created of ideas that they've created with their words. So it's much more, as I say, it's much less direct. It's much more, it's not he said, she said, I say, you say. You know, it's not about refutation or agreement. It's about something else. And I just really, really like that. I like that for a number of reasons. I like it for one because I quite like its analogy with the way that sort of brains work, and this is just my liking for it more than anything else. I don't think there's anything significant about this. But the way the brains work, you know, the way the messages are passed around the brain, it isn't like an electrical network, is it? I mean, it is. There's some electricity going on, but it's not like a switch and the switch goes through. It's a much more porous, spongy system than that, with all kinds of what's sometimes called quorum sensing operations going on. You know, if several of my neurons fire together, then the substrate, the environment in which those neurons are firing, the chemistry of that changes slightly in order to allow them to fire more readily next time. So it isn't just the neurons that are contributing to thinking, that apparently straightforward not linear, but networked thing of lines. It's also the kind of almost the weather system, the ocean of liquid that's changing its chemical composition, in which that network is suspended. And I quite like that, I like the analogy with that. That part of our communication, part of our thinking, isn't just about a stream of words forming a network with other streams of words. It's also the altering of the kind of chemistry of the environment around our language, which potentiates other kinds of things to be said, which are more oblique, have more, as I say, more kind of gentler relationships. I do like that, and that's where I think you also get that, by the way, in Quaker meetings. I haven't been to a Quaker meeting for a long time. I haven't been to very many altogether because I'm not a Quaker. But typically in Quaker meetings, that's kind of what happens. People sit in silence for an hour or so, and then when you feel the spirit move you or whatever, you stand up and say something, and then you sit down, and then it returns to silence again, and then maybe a little bit later on somebody will feel the spirit move them and they'll say something, and it might have some kind of tangential connection to what was said before, but it certainly wouldn't be a response to it. It would be a sense of being moved by the same spirit, and I'm not making any reference to any kind of divine authority here, just the kind of spirit in the sense of atmosphere or shared occupation of a thoughtful space in which the attention is not placed in the, as I say, the simple building blocks of language, but the more kind of environmental systems in which these things are lodged, in which they have an interplay with. So that's that, really. So yeah, that's the aspect of YouTube I quite like. The asynchronous nature of it, the fact that I'm not connected to you directly, and I wander through these fields, but with my head swimming with ideas that I couldn't really identify with one or other video usually. That it's just a swimming chemistry of ideas that have been absorbed from various videos that I've heard, and that I might be able to identify as sources, but I might not. Of course, roiling and turning with other ideas that are already in there, and at some point they'll potentiate an idea for me, and I'll add that to the mix. That comes out. Do you know what I mean? So that's that. I think that's all I got to say. It's also probably this little bit of it is kind of an apology, actually, because that liking that I have, or that aspect of it, is probably one of the reasons why I'm much less careful about responding to comments as I probably should be. I probably come across really rude, and I do apologise about that. Because some of the people who comment on my videos take a great deal of care over that. And it's not that I don't appreciate that, because I really do, and I read the comments. I don't always understand what's being said, but I try. And people have really invested in that, and I just think that's great. But one of the reasons I tend not to respond to comments as perhaps I should is just a question of time. I don't have a lot of time, and so I just prioritise making videos, which is a bit rude, I know, but that's what I do. But the other reason, as I say, is because I like to let things soften. I like to have this intermediary space between you and I, in which my ideas become part of the chemistry of the environment and join your ideas, and we're both mutually potentiated by the ocean of ideas in which we're both swimming. If that makes any sense at all. I am aware that it's a sea of bullshit a lot of the time as well, of course, but I don't mind that.